So in this video, I wanted to tackle the topic of corruption and what corruption is and what it means in a political context and what that means for the countries that experience corruption. Okay, so first of all, let's just start with a bit of a definition of corruption. Corruption is when a person or an entity uses a position of power in order to gain personal benefit for themselves that they weren't supposed to from that position, right? Now that's one definition of corruption. There's other dictionary definitions of corruption, such as corruption of a wound, but specifically for our definition, that's what we're going to use. So what does this mean? So this means that basically someone is leveraging a position that they have that they were given, and they were supposed to use that position to benefit others, or just be an administrator or something like that. But they're actually using it to benefit themselves specifically. And so this doesn't have to be just political. You can have corruption in within companies, within non-profits, within anything. But perhaps most relevant to our purposes today is political corruption. So I just want to give maybe some examples of corruption, because it can be a little bit hard to understand how someone leverages a position of authority to give themselves benefits. So for example, I'm going to give you an example. Say you're in charge of your country's Department of Transport, and you are deciding who gets to this is just one example. You're deciding who gets to build roads in your country, right? And so a bunch of people, a bunch of companies give you bids. One guy's like, I'll build the road for $500 and I'll build it pretty well. And one other guy's like, I'll build it for $600 and I'll build it pretty well. And last guy's like, I'll build it super well and it'll cost $800. And so you have to decide, you're supposed to toss up who will get to build the road. And you're supposed to use the idea of, I'm here in my position to benefit the people, and so I'm going to make the best possible decision for building the best road, okay? So that's what you're supposed to do. But now if you're corrupt, what you might do instead is the guy who's like, yeah, I'll build a road for $800. You're like, oh, that's pretty expensive, bro. I'm not going to give you a contract. But then he gives you personally, so not to the government, but to you personally, under the table, undisclosed, he gives you $100 and says, yeah, bro. So I'm giving you $100 now. You'll give me the road to build. And so that is called, that can be known as tender corruption, when when people tender a bid to build something. And so what's happened there is, imagine that's me being corrupt in that way. I've made $100 under the table, and these guys are happy because now they get to build a road and enjoy that government money, right? But the problem, and this might seem relatively innocent, like, well, what's the problem? But the problem is that the taxpayer, the country, has lost out. Because instead of getting the road built for whatever one of the other dude was offering, $500, the taxpayers actually paid $800 to build the road, so the taxpayer has lost $300. So that's one form of corruption. One way it can manifest. Another way it can manifest is very direct. As in, I'm maybe a government, I'm in charge of some government money. I just have government money, and I just directly transfer it into some accounts of mine. Maybe I send it to some Swiss account or some account in the Cayman Islands, and then I transfer it to myself. And so I'm literally just directly stealing government money. And this happens more in more autocratic regimes where corruption is much more common. And then we have another form of corruption, which is bribery, like low-level bribery. So say, for example, I work in passports, and I'm, issuing your passport. And I'm like, yeah, I could make your passport take 6 months, but, I could give it to you in 1 month if you give me a bit of money under the table. Or maybe I'm a police officer, and I'm like, I could give you a $100 ticket, but if you give me $25 personally to myself, then I won't issue you a ticket. So that's another form of corruption. And so, that sort of example I gave for passports can be very common. It could be for any sort of permit. Maybe you want to build a mine, right? And I could say to you, well, I could let you build this mine, and, maybe I could bog it down, it would take ages, or I just don't give you the permit or whatever. Or you could give me a few $100s and I'll give it to you real quick. Okay, and so what are the consequences of this? So now we've had some, and those by no means the only examples of corruption, by the way. There's lots of different ways that corruption can occur. But basically the idea is that you're taking money from your position that you shouldn't be getting, essentially. And it's not necessarily just money. I just like to make that clear. It can be anything. It could be favors, sexual favors, position. Maybe I could trade you a position. I'm like, yeah, I'll give you a higher rank if you do this, or even, I could give you gifts or anything. And so that's why a lot of companies are really aware of gift giving as well. But what does this corruption mean in politics for a country? Well, what it means is that the interests of the people get subverted in favor of the interest of the members of the government, right? So instead, say if we go back to that road example, instead of the road being built in the cheapest way for a taxpayer, it gets built in a much more expensive way, and the taxpayers pay more, and the government loses money. Also, it reduces efficiency. So, for example, people should be getting their I gave a passport example. People should be getting their passports quickly and efficiently anyway, right? And it should be an egalitarian system where, you know, everybody gets it in a similar amount of time. But corruption warps that, and the system becomes much less efficient, and it's only efficient for people who pay money. Same thing with permits. So, for example, a permit should be given based on merit. You know, say I'm giving you a permit whether you can mine in a place or not. It should be based on merit, right? It should take a standard amount of time. It should be based on merit. But instead, with a corrupt system, what happens is it's not based on merit. Maybe this guy's mining operation is terrible, but I just gave him to him because he paid me money, right? And now we have an inefficient mine or a damaging mine running in the country. And so basically, overall, this is just a very brief summary of the idea of corruption, just to give you a sort of a concept of what it means. But basically, if we were to summarize this whole video, corruption is using your position that you were given for to gain specifically for yourself in politics, because that's the example we're using, and the consequences are that it massively reduces the efficiency of a governing system or a government, and it subverts the will of the people, or sorry, the interests of the people in favor of those in government. And so, yeah, thanks very much for watching this brief summary. I'm going to be doing a few of these videos where I'll just be sort of summarizing topics relevant to politics in these sort of like 5 or now this is 6 minutes, just to give you an idea of what they mean so you can understand what these terms mean when they're thrown around. Because, you know, people will throw around all the time, you know, this guy's corrupt, or, you know, corruption in this country is very corrupt, or whatever. Now, hopefully you'll have an idea of what that means when that term is used. So, yeah, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.